Welcome everyone, my name is Brendan Snyder. Thank you for joining me for the top 10 rock albums of all time. Yes, I know that is a lofty banner to put out there to try to narrow down all of rock into 10 albums here, but I'm going to do my best. And so words like the best, the greatest of all time really come to mind to describe these albums here. But overall, I think they are career-defining, genre-setting, hugely influential, record-breaking albums that simply every rock fan should own. And before we get into this countdown, if you're new to my channel and you haven't already hit the subscribe button, please click the button. Also leave a comment, hit like, all those things help support my channel. I would greatly appreciate it. And if you enjoyed the video or you know someone that would, please share it out on social media. Help get the word out that way too. I would also appreciate that. And of course, by subscribing, you'll be able to stay up to date on all that's going on in the world of music, just like this with the top 10 rock albums of all time. And so putting this together, I went through so many different bands, considering them, listening to albums from Queen, Rolling Stones, Yes, Rush, Kansas, Aerosmith, Tom Petty, Whitesnake, Foreigner, Journey, just to name a few here. But quite simply, there just isn't enough room in a top 10 list for all the great bands that are out there. So question remains, who made it into the list here? Kicking things off at number 10, we have Deep Purple, Machine Head 1972, sixth studio album, 2 million copies sold. Everything really seems to come together for these guys on this album here. All five guys are in their element, and the album itself featured some real standout songs like Highway Star, which personally I think is one of the best driving songs ever. It has that interplay between John Lord's keyboards and Ritchie Blackmore's guitar parts on it. Plus you've got Space Truckin', which the opening keyboard and guitar riff is just excellent, creating a really cool spacey groove, that's befitting, I think, of the song title. And you've got Smoke on the Water on this one, which is maybe the most overplayed guitar riff, but it's also the most classic riff, I think, of all time. And the way that the song builds, adding an instrument each time as it goes through with it at the intro, just makes it one of the most classic rock songs ever. This album here truly melds together some of the greatest musicians in all of rock. Coming in at number 9, we have The Doors' 1967 self-titled debut, which sold 4 million copies. The band was unique in that they did not have a bass player. Yes, I know they used one live at some point, and towards the end with L.A. Woman, they even recorded with one, but they never had one as a member, and definitely not on this album here. Instead, Ray Manzarek played the bass parts on his keyboard, which I think provided a unique sound for the band, setting them apart from the pack at the time. And of course, they had one of the most charismatic frontmen ever in Jim Morrison, but the album itself also featured a lot of different styles in it. Rock, blues, jazz, pop, psychedelia, even some classical elements are infused into this. You got classic songs like Break On Through, which is an up-tempo rocker, a great song, and it features a bossa nova drum part by John Dinsmore on it, making it a little different. Light My Fire, that one there is, got one of the most recognizable keyboard riffs from Ray Manzarek, but it had Latin and classical flares infused into it. Then you have The End, which is an epic 11-minute song with elements of psychedelia and even remnants of early goth are on this thing, just showing what an innovator the band and album was for 1967. Coming in at number 8, we have The Who, Who's Next, 1971, fifth studio album by the band, 3 million copies sold. And it developed out of the aborted rock opera Lifehouse, and the album itself prominently uses synthesizers on it while moving away from that original mod sound into a full-on rock album. This album here was a big shift for the band. Featured some amazing songs like Baba O'Reilly, which has one of the most iconic keyboard samples ever, making it instantly recognizable. And then of course you've got those huge crashing guitars that I think put it over the top. Behind Blue Eyes, one of the most beautiful ballads that still rocks by the end, and of course Won't Get Fooled Again, another iconic keyboard sample with big crashing guitars again, and a perfect way to finish such a classic album here. Coming in at number 7, Boston, self-titled debut, 1976, one of the finest recorded and produced albums ever. Actually recorded are done from the original demo, just enhanced in the studio by guitarist Tom Schultz, who I think is a studio genius. The layered effect is done to its best here, of course, later to be used to great effect by Def Leppard, featuring the stunning songs More Than a Feeling. Beautiful intro on that just soars into one of the greatest 70s rock songs ever. Peace of Mind, perfect melding of acoustic and electric instrumentation with some fantastic riffing on it. Foreplay, Long Time, the instrumental intro with the organ is to die for on this song here, and I just love the huge big drum sound on this one here, which leads me to talk about the overall sound of the album. You know, that great mix of electric and acoustic instrumentation is throughout. You got huge soaring vocals, big huge guitars to match on that, making this a powerful AOR masterpiece. And coming in at number 6, Def Leppard, Hysteria, 1987, fourth studio album, 12 million copies sold. Got amazing production by Mutt Lange, which is a key factor on this album. Mutt is essentially the sixth member of the band for what he was able to do on this album here. Of course, the production on it is only as good as the songs provided, by the band, which they deliver on all fronts here. You've got amazing hard rockers, beautiful ballads, spacey epic songs on here featuring a staggering 7 singles at the time, including some greats like Pour Some Sugar on Me, one of the biggest sounding and soaring songs ever. Great for parties, bringing a crowd to their feet, and it's got some great guitar riffing from Phil Collen, which I think is perfect on this. Armageddon it, more cool riffing, got some sly vocals on this over a nice chugging rocker of a song. And then Animal, which is one of the best melodic rock songs ever, with driving rhythms and just the right amount of guitar accent on it. This album for me represents a specific time, but somehow has remained timeless. So for me, truly an album of the ages, or should I say rock of ages, right? Okay, number 5, Van Halen, 1978 self-titled debut album, which has sold 10 million copies in the US. While negatively received and reviewed by the critics at the time, it is now seen as one of the greatest debut albums of all time. And beyond that, it was also one of the biggest genre-shifting albums. I think it led to the explosion that was 80s rock and glam metal. With a 1 minute and 42-second instrumental guitarist, Eddie Van Halen redefined the guitar. Eruption is now considered one of the greatest guitar solos of all time. And the album itself is filled with classics like Runnin' with the Devil, that staccato bass line that's on it, with the amazing vocal performance by David Lee Roth. Ain't Talking About Love, one of their definitive tracks, so much so that even future vocalist Sammy Hagar, who refused to perform early David Lee Roth songs, would perform this song. And then you've got a great classic Kinks cover, You Really Got Me, which I think Van Halen actually does to better effect here. So this album in whole just really shows that there was nothing that the band could not do. All right, coming in at number 4, Physical Graffiti, 1975, 6th studio album, 16 million copies sold in the US. And for this album here, the band wrote 8 new songs, but the time on it amounted to 3 sides of an LP. So they added 7 previously unreleased songs and created a double album out of it. And the album itself is just a real tour de force, covering a number of styles like standard rock, hard rock, progressive rock, orchestral rock, and even folk on this. In my opinion, I think the band was at their creative peak on this album here with songs like Custard Pie. That was a newly recorded one in 1974. And then you've got The Rover, which is one of guitarist Jimmy Page's most underrated guitar lines on it, originally recorded for Houses of the Holy, and additional guitar parts added in 1974. Then you've got Kashmir, which is one of the most progressive pieces in all of rock, becoming a concert staple for them, and now is one of the most iconic songs too. Plus you've got Down by the Seaside, which was a Zeppelin 4 outtake. Starts off beautifully before moving into a middle rock section and returning to a mellow end. Both a simple and complex song, which I think is also an understatement for the band of this caliber, yet is exactly what they are in terms of this beautiful, fantastic classic album that it is. Coming in at number 3, Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon, 1973, 8th studio album that has sold 15 million copies in the US, with an estimated 45 million around the world. So the studio and recording advancements of this album alone, I think, warrants its position, but also the boundaries that it broke. And it's also allowed it to be the longest running album on the Billboard 200 album chart at 957 weeks. So this album here is both beautiful, dark, it's got some spiritual undertones, and then some outstanding guitar nuances by David Gilmour. And you've got stellar tracks on here like Time, which is dark yet uplifting, and some amazing drumming by Nick Mason on it. The Great Gig in the Sky, which is a beautiful piece by keyboardist Rick Wright, with some amazing vocals that were actually done on the spot or made up on the spot by the guest female vocalist. Just amazing what she was able to do. Money, which is an utter classic. Who doesn't know that cha-ching at the beginning of it over that classic bass line by Roger Waters? Quite possibly a perfect album if there ever was one. Right, coming in at number 2, Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction, 1987 debut, 18 million copies sold with an estimated 30 million worldwide. One of the dirtiest, sleaziest hard rock masterpieces ever. They blend classic rock like the Rolling Stones with Aerosmith, with blues undertones, for one of the best rock albums ever, in my opinion. Every song on here is good start to finish. From album opener, Welcome to the Jungle, that's a gritty hard rocker, to Paradise City, that starts melodically but also rocks hard by the end, to Sweet Child of Mine, that has the greatest guitar intro riff ever by Slash. The thing is, what stands out to me about this album here is that the songs feel like they're compiled out of multiple songs, bringing a lot of character to each one. The song itself could just turn on a dime, which provides sort of an uncertainty and an element of dangerousness to this, which was really evident at the time in 1987. But I think this album here retains that, making it timeless. And I honestly don't think we will ever get another rock album like this one. And coming in at number 1 for the number 1 rock album of all time, AC/DC Back in Black, 1980, 7th studio album, 25 million copies sold in the US with an estimated 50 million copies worldwide, featuring some of the greatest guitar riffing by Malcolm Young. It may be simple 3-chord blues rock, but it's done better by AC/DC. In my opinion, no one else can do it better than they do it. Vocalist Brian Johnson accentuates each song nicely, and then you got lead guitarist Angus Young in there just scorching everything in his path. I think the electricity on this is simply unmatched. It's got 3 of the biggest rock songs in all of rock on here: Hell's Bells, Back in Black, You Shook Me All Night Long. The whole thing, though, has amazing radio hits. I've literally heard every one of these songs on the radio at one time or another. And the album itself is essentially a greatest hits with some of the best rock songs ever. Enough said. Whew, there you go, guys. All right, that was the top 10 rock albums of all time. Really difficult narrowing it down, as I'm sure you can imagine. I'm sure you guys have your own opinions on what should have been included or what should have been the number 1. So certainly let me know your thoughts. I hope everyone has a great day, and I'll talk to you all real soon. Bye, everyone.